The American Civil War was a turning point in American history. The war itself was littered with major events, one of the most famous being the Battle of Gettysburg. The battle came in the middle of the war, but has gone down as one of the most noteworthy conflicts in American history. So, if the Battle of Gettysburg didn't end the war, why is it so significant? Join us as we take a look at the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. The North and South were at loggerheads for dominance, and the issue of slavery was as much about political and economic principles as it was about moral values. However, the growing ideological opposition to slavery and the rise of abolitionism in the North created further tensions between the North and South. The Southern states decided that the only way to regain a sense of control would be political autonomy and began withdrawing from the Union. Fueled by his democratic ideals and what he viewed as his constitutional duty, Lincoln had been determined to keep the Union intact. In order to preserve unity, Lincoln was ready to allow slavery to continue in the South, but he had categorically stated that he held secession to be wrong. Tensions mounted during the winter of 1860 to the spring of 1861 as the Southern states began to secede. War finally broke out on April 12th when the Confederates opened fire on the Union-controlled Fort Sumter, which was an island at the entrance of Charleston Harbor. After 34 hours, the commander of the fort, Major Robert Anderson, along with his 85 men, surrendered the fort to the 5,500-strong Confederate force. In the following weeks, 4 more states withdrew from the Union and joined the Confederacy. After a series of bloody battles with victories and defeats on both sides, Lincoln made a decisive move that would change the stakes of the war. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. The proclamation declared freedom for enslaved people in the rebellious Southern states. Despite its limitations, the Emancipation Proclamation captured the imagination and hearts of Americans, transforming the war from a fight to retain the Union to a battle for freedom. The Union Army and Navy also began recruiting black soldiers, inspiring thousands to fight for the Union in order to liberate the enslaved people of the South. The Emancipation Proclamation also inspired the enslaved workers in the South, giving them hope that they could secure liberation to try and encourage them to escape, therefore robbing the South of their valuable labor force. Another effect of the Emancipation Proclamation is that it robbed the Confederates of any chance of alliance with European powers. By shifting the focus of the war from political representation to a crusade against slavery, Lincoln had made European intervention impossible. Soon after the Emancipation Proclamation had been declared, Lincoln decided to reorganize the commanders of his army. A series of commanders had failed to stop a Confederate force under Robert E. Lee, who was now camped at Fredericksburg. Lincoln appointed Joseph Hooker to take over from Ambrose Burnside as commander of the Army of the Potomac, as Burnside's poor leadership had led to the Union defeat at Fredericksburg. Hooker immediately began polishing up the army and constructing what he felt to be the perfect plan to take down Lee and his army at the Battle of Chancellorsville in May 1863. Despite Hooker's confidence and the fact that his army greatly outnumbered Lee's, the Union suffered a shocking and embarrassing defeat at the hands of the Confederates. Invigorated from victory, Lee decided to go on the offensive and invade the North. He hoped to divert Union troops away from the besieged Confederate forces in Vicksburg, shift the forces of the war away from Virginia, and gain the attention of Britain and France. Once again, Lincoln found himself needing to replace the leader of the Army of the Potomac, and this time chose Major General George Gordon Meade. Lee was brimming with confidence and wanted to defeat the Union on Northern soil. The Gettysburg Campaign could tip the balance of the conflict, bringing the fight to the North, which had so far been spared the ravages of war. Lee's firm belief, supported by his previous victories, was that his men would be invincible, and a Confederate victory was inevitable. At the end of June 1863, members of the Union and Confederate armies ran into each other in the crossroads town of Gettysburg. Some Confederate divisions arrived in Gettysburg on the hunt for supplies and encountered 2 Union cavalry brigades that were on a scouting mission. The scouts then retreated to their respective main forces, with the Confederates in Cashtown and the bulk of the Army of the Potomac still in Maryland under orders to remain between Washington and the advancing rebel army. The following day, the Confederates resolved to get the supplies they needed from Gettysburg, even though they risked a confrontation with the Union forces. Fighting broke out in earnest on the morning of July 1st. After a day of combat, the Union troops were forced to retreat from the town. further adding to the Confederates' confidence. However, south of the town, on Cemetery Ridge, the Union held the high ground. On July 2nd, Lee was still determined for a swift victory and ordered immediate assaults on the Union line, although his generals, who were more defensively minded, advised him against an outright attack. Lee wanted to conduct a pincer movement, with one battalion attacking the Union's left and another simultaneously striking the right. He ordered the attacks to take place as early in the day as possible, but delays in positioning and miscommunication allowed Union reinforcements to arrive and strengthen the Union's defenses. The Confederate men were not able to coordinate their attack until 4 p.m., and fierce fighting erupted, but the Union soldiers were able to keep their strategic high ground positions. As the second day of combat came to a close, casualties stood at over 20,000, making it one of the bloodiest days in the Civil War. Despite the heavy losses on both sides, Lee still believed his army to be invincible. He was convinced that it would only take one more push for the Confederates to triumph. Lee decided to send 3 divisions against the Union forces on Cemetery Ridge, believing that the Union forces were on the ropes. In reality, he sent less than 15,000 troops marching across open fields towards the dug-in Union infantry. The resulting attack was a catastrophic failure, and thousands of Confederate soldiers were either killed, captured, or wounded. The Union infantry was able to fire upon the exposed Confederate divisions from behind stone walls. At the same time, further regiments hit the Confederate flanks. Barely half of the Confederate force survived in order to retreat to their defensive line. In total, an estimated 3,903 Confederate soldiers had died, with a further 18,735 wounded. On July 4th, Lee and what was left of his army braced themselves for a Union counterattack, but none came. Late that night, in the driving rain, the Confederates retreated to Virginia. Many, including Lincoln, criticized Meade for allowing the Confederate army to escape. However, many historians now believe that Meade's decision was most likely the best course of action. The Union Army had suffered heavy losses, with approximately 3,155 men dead and 14,529 wounded. After the intense 3-day battle, it would have been difficult to motivate and reform the troops. Furthermore, had the Union Army failed, Washington would have been left open to an attack from the south. Gettysburg is often seen as an important turning point in the American Civil War. Although the war raged on for nearly 2 more years, the Confederates made no further attempts to invade the North. The morale and bravado that had motivated Lee and his army had been wiped out, along with any hope that powers in Europe might take notice of the Confederate cause. As for the Union, it reinvigorated the war effort, providing a much-needed victory that boosted morale. Days after the battle, a Philadelphia newspaper ran the story with the headline, "Waterloo Eclipsed," providing an insight into just how important the victory was for the North. The win on home turf gave the Union troops a boost that would take them through the next couple of years and lead them to ultimate triumph. The significance of the Gettysburg Campaign was intensified in the fall of 1863, when Lincoln made one of the most famous speeches in the history of the United States, the Gettysburg Address. On November 19th, a dedication ceremony was held at the Gettysburg Civil War Cemetery. The featured speaker was the most famous orator of the time, Edward Everett. Everett delivered a monumental 2-hour speech that made comparisons to other famous historical battles, including the Battle of Marathon and the Wars of the Roses. He ended his monologue by declaring, "Wheresoever throughout the civilized world the accounts of this great warfare are read, and down to the latest period of recorded time, in the glorious annals of our common country, there will be no brighter page that which relates the Battle of Gettysburg." Unfortunately for Everett, the next speaker was Lincoln, whose 2-minute speech blew Everett's eloquent soliloquy out of the water, going down in history as one of the most classical utterances of all time. The day after the event, Everett wrote to Lincoln, stating, "I wish I could flatter myself that I had come as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes." Lincoln began the speech with the immortal line, "Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal." The speech cemented the importance of the battle and gave meaning to the deaths of the men who had fallen in the conflict. Lincoln forewent alluding to keeping the Union intact and instead emphasized the struggle for equality and liberty. By focusing on the morality of the Union cause, he lifted the spirits of the North and gave them a virtuous cause to get behind. If 1863 was the moral turning point for the American Civil War, Gettysburg was the fuel that fired the Union to continue to fight. Not only were they fighting for the nation, for freedom and equality for all, but they were also fighting so the estimated 23,000 Union soldiers who were killed or injured during the battle had not made the sacrifice in vain. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the Gettysburg Campaign, check out our book, The Gettysburg Campaign, a captivating guide to the military invasion of Pennsylvania that culminated in the Battle of Gettysburg during the American Civil War. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.